There are so many distinguished people that I would like to recognize. Of course, it starts with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the former president of Malawi, Joyce Banda, the commissioner of the European Union, Neven Mimica, Carlos Lopez from the Economic Commission for Africa, and my dear friends also Zainab and Lakshmi, and of course our hosts from Ethiopia. So, honorable members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, thank you for this opportunity to speak before the Women in Parliament's annual summit, a very impressive global gathering of women parliamentarians and politicians, and I want to pay tribute to Ms. Silvana Koch-Marin for this wonderful initiative, a founder of Women in Parliaments and former Vice President of the European Parliament. For me also this is a very special occasion, very special meaning, because I myself have been member of the Parliament of Bulgaria for 2 terms. And I believe that these were some of the most important and passionate years of my career, political and professional. And I know the importance of parliaments, and I know the importance of women in parliaments. I'm especially honored to speak in this splendid hall named after the man who changed the history of the continent and of the world. And I am grateful to Lakshmi Puri, who just mentioned that in 1994, in his first inaugural speech, State of the Nation address, he paid tribute also to the importance of women that have to be emancipated from all forms of oppression. And I'm very proud that UNESCO, in celebrating this year's 70th anniversary, started the 1-year-long celebrations last November with a Mandela Day. I was honored also to be in Beijing in 1995, where we adopted such an important declaration that we are celebrating this year, 20 years of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And like many of you, I have just returned from the 59th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which explored achievements and sought to mobilize and tackle the new challenges. And we all agreed there has been tremendous progress across the world since 1995. Maternal mortality has been cut by almost half. There have been strong steps towards parity for girls and boys in primary school. More and more women are active in politics. Africa, and we just heard the very impressive figures, boasts 14 out of the world's 46 countries where women account for more than a quarter of parliamentarians, and in 7 of them, they're among the most advanced in the world. But, as Carlos Lopez just said, there is always but. Steep challenges remain. Women represent only 1 in 5 parliamentarians. Only 20 national leaders in the world are women. 5 of the world's parliaments have no women representatives, and there are 8 governments with no women ministers at all. The situation is stark in education. Girls and women are still the majority of out-of-school children, youth, and illiterate adults. According to UNESCO's Global Monitoring Report on Education for All, there are 31 million girls who should be in primary school but are not, and the number is higher for the secondary. By 2012, only 63% of countries have achieved gender parity at primary level, and only 38% of countries at secondary level. If these trends continue, in sub-Saharan Africa, the richest boys will achieve universal primary completion in 2021, while the poorest girls in poor rural communities until 2086. Across the world, there remained almost 500 million illiterate women. Too many girls in too many countries are held back because they are girls. They are forced to work, married off, taken away from school. Recent analysis by Unesco that school-related gender-based violence to be far too prevalent. This situation is not accessible because inequalities condemns women to poverty, it undermines the health of society, it curtails opportunities for sustainable growth. In order to get access to economic resources, women have to be educated. They have to have the necessary skills. The Economist magazine estimated recently the increase of employment of women in developed countries, just to give one example, during the last decade has added more to global growth than China, more than the global growth than China. The Food and Agricultural Organization has determined that closing the gender gap in agricultural inputs could lift 100 to 150 million people out of hunger. We know, and I'm preaching maybe to the converted, but we must never tire to share our message. Gender equality is a human right. Gender equality is a development multiplier, and gender equality is a force for peace. We have no more powerful transformational force, and this starts on the benches of schools. Education, I believe, is the breakthrough strategy for human development. It gives voice, encourages civic participation, and widens opportunity on the labor market. According, once again, to our global monitoring report, if all girls had primary education in sub-Saharan Africa and South and West Asia, child marriage would fall by 14%. If they had secondary education, this would fall by 64%. This is why gender equality and education, goals 4 and 5 in the future Sustainable Development Agenda, must stand at the heart of the global sustainable efforts that are shaping this year. Let me underline here the importance of the parliamentary voice in crafting the new agenda to strengthen its link to the aspirations of citizens in every society. We need to get the new global agenda right. We must also act on the ground. And this spirit guides the partnership between the African Union and UNESCO. I commend the African Union and African heads of state and government for declaring 2015 as the year of women's empowerment and development towards Africa Agenda 2063. This marks the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, as well as the 5th anniversary of the African Women's Decade 2010-2020, and the 15th anniversary of the landmark United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. UNESCO is deeply committed to supporting implementation of the African Union Commission Strategic Plan 2014-2017. I have built the priorities of this plan into the UNESCO operational strategy for Priority Africa, including the goal to mainstream the participation of women and the youth in all priorities and activities of the Union and the continent. And I recall very well the conference we held at UNESCO in 2012 with Dr. Dlamini Zuma to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Pan-African Women Organization. In follow-up, in the framework of the 70th anniversary of UNESCO, we are launching this year a major publication on the Pan-African Women Organization to highlight the leadership of African women in shaping the continent today. In the same spirit, UNESCO launched with the African Union Commission an award-winning e-learning tool called Women in African History. to pay tribute to the role of women in Africa's emancipation and development, which accompanies our groundbreaking project of African history. And I very well recall the words of Dr. Dlamini Zuma when she said, "Nobody tells the story that African women are at the forefront of development." Well, we started to tell this story jointly with the African Union. These same convictions guide UNESCO's effort all across the world. In Afghanistan, we have reached 600,000 learners with literacy, the predominant majority women and girls. In Iraq, we have set up community learning centers to provide literacy to girls and women. In Pakistan, we are targeting girls and women with literacy skills. And I launched last year in Islamabad a special Malala Fund for girls' right to education with the government of Pakistan, working in the Swat Valley with community and religious leaders. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, UNESCO has established a regional center for research and documentation for gender and peace building in the Great Lakes region to prevent gender-based violence and promote women's role in peace building. In Ghana, the Gambia, and Liberia, UNESCO has launched a women's leadership training program. In Morocco and Tunisia, we are working to promote women's leadership within political parties. With South Sudan, where 88% of women are illiterate, UNESCO is helping the government to set up and implement its first education strategies. I'm more than convinced, with extremism on the rise, with violence linked to this extremism that targets mostly women and girls, we need these new forms of soft power, working with governments, civil society, and private sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of parliament, I believe girls and women are already pioneering change across the world, in schools, in communities, in parliaments, and we must recognize this role and multiply it even more. I think this is the leadership we need. As Dr. Dlamini Zuma just said in her speech, leadership has to have a vision. I recall last July when I went to South Sudan, and I met a young woman student who read to me the following poem she has written herself. Education is a sword that cuts and chops the edges of illiteracy, ignorance, and indolence. That is why, she told me, I want to do everything possible in order to support the right of girls and women to education, to eliminate this ignorance. I believe this young girl, young woman, was a true leader. This is about leadership. And of course, let me mention the example of Malala Yousufzai, who was attacked on the 9th of October 2012 in Pakistan, and who was jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in 2014 with Kailash Satyarthi, who I know will participate in this conference, a big campaigner and human rights activist. Malala was shot precisely because she is a leader. And I was honored to attend the Nobel Prize ceremony in Oslo on the 10th of December when Malala said, "I'm just a committed and stubborn person who wants to see every child getting quality education, who wants equal rights for women and peace in every corner of the world." This is about leadership. And I think this is also about political will and engagement and strong commitment. She called this stubbornness. If this is the word, so let us be more stubborn, let us be more committed, let us be more engaged. I believe as women parliamentarians, you know the importance of this message more than anyone. And I would like to thank you and to commend you for this leadership. And in this hall, on behalf of UNESCO, I would like to pledge that I will do everything to empower girls and women everywhere in every society, because I do believe that this is probably the most important human rights, transformational and development issue, and last but not least, an issue linked to peace for the 21st century. Thank you for your attention.